It has to be education.
Break it down.
It has to be education, it has to be knowledge, it has to be transparency, and oftentimes it has to start in your school system. We have to be able to know if you have a community of blacks and browns. When we grew up, they had some certain classes to teach us about our own culture, to teach us about what's going on in our own community. So it's like it takes knowledge, it takes understanding of your own community. We need to be taught. And what's happening, we are raising a generation who are not being taught anymore. And we don't hold values of our own culture, of our own heritage, of our own ethnicity anymore. And so now we have a lot of misconception. We have a lot of stereotypes because we don't know. And so in order to break that
Pastor,
down,
I don't want to know about your culture because I got my culture. Why I need your culture?
then it makes it even more difficult for us to live together if I don't understand you.
Starts at the home first.
Yeah, it starts at home.
It starts at the home
Yeah, that's
first.
what I'm saying. The kids are not being taught.
Got a hand right there, sir.
I find that a lot of, especially our young people, I say that because I'm older now, but I find that they don't know anything about themselves. And since we're talking about blacks and Hispanics, because I don't think we don't have a large number of white population in Hempstead anymore, if we don't know about ourselves, we can't understand anybody else's culture.
That's right.
Okay, and that's one of the main things why we're separated. I grew up in a community, I didn't grow up, I came here when I was 15. So as far as I was concerned, I was already grown and raised. But I grew up with Dominicans and Puerto Ricans in the Bronx. So it was nothing strange to me when Spanish people were around talking Spanish. It was no big deal. I wasn't like standing around, so, oh, they talking about me. I grew up in a culture like that. You know what I'm saying? But here, Long Island was different. When the Hispanic people started coming to Long Island, we had a few families from El Salvador, just a few back then, but most of them were from the Dominican Republic and some from Nicaragua, places like that. It was strange to everybody that I had newly met on Long Island. It was strange to where they come from. Oh, what they talking Spanish? We don't know what they're talking about, you know. But I guess what I'm trying to say is you gotta let these kids mix with each other
And learn.
and learn.
Let me ask a question. Can I give you an example? I was in Connecticut this weekend, Sunday, at a church that had 17, 18 different nationalities that all go to church together. It was International Day. They paraded the flags of their countries and the states from which they came. The pastor got lit from the NAACP saying, why are you going to allow Alabama and Georgia's flag to parade? And he said, well, that's where they're from. Anybody know what's on the flag of Alabama and Georgia? The Confederate flag.
Yes.
He had no idea why, from a culturally standpoint, why that was significant. So I said, Pastor, and he did the seminary, but he was from the West Indies, from one of the islands. I think he was from St. Lucia. He did not understand what the concern was for the African Americans because he was Caribbean American and not understanding it. And those little nuances are utilized over and over again to separate folks. So when we talk about, and then when I explained it to him, he said, oh yeah, I see why people could be upset. But till that time, he hadn't been able to intellectualize it or understand it. So let me ask this, and B. Jones, let me ask you this. If you had the opportunity to sit at a Christmas dinner and have pupusas, and then invite somebody to your house, because I know your wife is a good cook and so are you, to share in that, would that be anything, and I'm just using food as a point of reference, but is it that type of thing that we need to get to be able to understand who we are in order to be able to stay together, not just come together over emergencies, because we can do that once in a while. What do you think?
That is just, in my opinion, that's just one way. I think the mutual respect is the number one ingredient that you need in order to bring change. You have to be honest with yourself. The food is an introduction. I think that the food would be the cultural difference in the food would be a nice way, but you can also insult someone if you don't particularly care for that. I think the reality is bigger than the food is is what I said earlier, it's just about respect. I think it's about people coming together, respecting each other's space, respecting each other's religion, respecting each other's education, not coming in with your own notions on how someone should or shouldn't act. That's just it in a nutshell. I think that was good.
Now, I'm gonna push back on you a little bit. That's a conclusion. That's a conclusion. My question is, what is the pathway
To open the door.
to that conclusion? What are some of the constructive steps? And we'll throw it out here. What are some of the constructive steps in this thing that we call Hempstead, this community where some of us are residents, some of us are business owners, some of us work in the community, a community that we all care about? What are some of the things that get us to that conclusion where we can say, I respect you, but how do we get there? Yeah, you wanna-
Well, I think Bill's been, comment about, and you're talking about the puzzle pieces. I think you start, I'm talking about, where do we start? I think it starts with self, and taking what Brian talked about, the puzzle pieces, and recognizing, being able to see the bigger picture, and that we are just one piece, and without each other, we are nothing. And we need to, I don't actually even need to know you intimately. I don't need to know about your culture intimately. I think that if I have the ability to understand that you are the puzzle piece that is missing in this equation, just that realization, that awareness is an important start.
Okay, we have a hand over here.
I know you went a little further, but I like to ask, we have to start historically, okay, at the very beginning. How does the one-drop rule play into our prejudices? All right? For example, there was the Spanish slavery system, and there was the English slavery, British slavery system. The Spanish one said 1 drop of white blood and you're white. The British said 1 drop of black blood and you're black. So now, when we have a situation where Pele, everybody know Pele, right? Pele is considered Caucasian legally, okay? So when we have that, and then we have still the Afro-Latinos who are coming here to the United States asking for help because of the prejudices back in their countries, how do we begin to come together even here in this community?
So that's a question. That's a question. We have a couple of hands. There's a hand here and a hand here, please.
There is an invisible force.
And keep your voice up so everybody can hear you.
There is an invisible force, which I call it propaganda.
Okay?
Okay? The media, both TV and the newspaper, really take full advantage of that. And every single day, they focus on certain ethnic groups and propagate those incidents to be greater than what they are. Conversely, where there's a host of corruptions, people in high places who are given and trusted with a lot of trust, create bigger crimes, and yet the propaganda associated with that, or bringing that attention and writing it through the media, is minimized. So that, we have to be careful of what we read and how we digest it, because it's really, they call it brainwashing.
Okay.
And it goes back to education, but we have to be able to decide what facts from fiction, and also and challenge the source from those materials are being
Maneuver through that propaganda field.
Exactly.
We have a hand here, we have a hand here, and a hand there.
Yes, sir, I'm so glad you said everything I was going to say. And that's why I think that one of the main things, and Brian alluded to this we have to think for ourselves. When we deal with whoever each day, whether the person is Caucasian, Hispanic, West Indian, Black, whatever, that's an individual. That doesn't mean, whatever experience you have with that person, doesn't mean that everybody is like that. That's that person. And I have this experience because in my particular profession, I go to different businesses every day. They're owned by Asians, Blacks, Caucasian, West Indian, and like some having a bad day before I go there. And a smile changes the whole thing. You know, so that is something that's universal. We are all individuals. We can't allow, I actually went to an organization that names the upper ones the parasitical elite class, because they're the ones that keep this division going between us. And so that they can keep us divided, you divide and conquer, so they can continue to parasitically live off of us. That's one of the main things that we have got to focus on and not allow to happen. And so, Sean, I'm glad you brought that out about the media, because that is one of the main things. Subconsciously, they put so many messages in the mind. When you look on the internet, they can talk about a news story about someone, and they show that person a sad face. That picture wasn't of that instance. That was something they took. Yeah,